Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to say, Brakti Hawa, Brakti Hawa Shai, Brakti Hawa, Brakti Hawa Shai, Brakti Hawa, Bashimi Hawa Shai, Bashim Waha, Rakah Kodash. And double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who do rule and teach well. And peace and blessings to the hopeful elect. Young brother here, Shamash Wan, with another video. And Lord, and it'll be edifying. This will be a continuation to Daniel, the 7th chapter. Last part we talked about Babylon, how they took off the yoke from Assyria, and they took up the mantle as the ruling nation, and the Babylonians that had the Neo-Babylonian Empire. And now we're going to read about the fall of the Neo-Babylonian Empire. Not really going to focus much on it, but we're going to mention certain things and how that's going to lead to the rise of the next beast, that is to take power and rulership, which, as you can see in the intro, is the Persian Median Empire, or the Medo-Persian Empire. So let's just go into it. Daniel, the 7th chapter and the 5th verse. And behold, another beast, a second like to a bear, and he raised itself up on one side, and had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And he said thus unto it, Arise, devour much flesh. So let's read it again. Actually, before we read it again, let's just get a source. EnduringWord.com, and this is a commentary on Daniel, the 7th chapter, and this is the 4th verse. This is the 4th verse, the 5th verse. Salakia. The bear represented the Medo-Persian Empire succeeding the Babylonian Empire, which we're going to explain that later on, the 3 ribs. And this partnership between the Medes and the Persians dominated the relationship. And let's just go into the history of just that. This is Ducksters.com and history, ancient Mesopotamia, biography of Cyrus the Great. And I read down here, founding an empire. Around the age of 21, Cyrus took over the throne as king of Anshan. At this time, Anshan was still a vassal state to the Median Empire. Cyrus led a revolt against the Median Empire, and by 549 BC, he had completely conquered Media. He now called himself the king of Persia, which Anshan is just in that same region. Yep, Anshan in Iran. Let's see here. Is a ancient Persian city. All right, and how come the Medes had control of Persia? Why are the Medes in Persia? Okay, this is history www.historyworld.net. In history of Iran, Persia, the Medes and the Persians from the 9th century BC. Of the 2 main Indo-European tribes moving south into Iran, is at first the Medes, who played a dominant role. And the Medes are Japhites. You can just read that in Genesis, the 10th chapter. And the Persians are Elamites, which are your modern-day East Indians. And, the Medes are Japhites, and your Japhites are your Hawaiians, your Fijians, etc., etc. So let's read this again, history.world.net. I meant to mention that at first. Probably should have started with that, but, it is what it is. So this is historyworld.net. The Medes and the Persians from the 9th century BC are the 2 main Indo-European tribes moving south into Iran. It is at first the Medes who played a dominant role, with the capital at Ecbatana, modern Hamadan. They established themselves as powerful neighbors of Assyria. In 612 BC, they combined with Babylon to sack the Syrian capital at Nineveh. Their spoils of northern Assyria and much of Anatolia, which is in Asia Minor, which are the same people anyway. They're both Japhites. Not saying that the Syrians are, I'm just saying the people at Anatolia and the people of the Medes are both Japhites. Where the Halys River becomes the border between themselves and Lydia. The Medes already control much of Iran, including Fars in the southwest. This is the heartland of Persia, or Persians, whose king is a vassal of the Medes, and from whose name the region has until recently been known as Persia in the west. Okay, so the Medes already controlled much of Iran or Persia, and it looks like even before 612 BC. So that's just the way the Lord had it set up, and it all plays into biblical prophecy, because the Medes were at first the ones ruling, and then the Persians were the ones that took over. Because remember, we just read here from Duxers.com, Cyrus led a revolt against the Median Empire. So that's that. And there's actually a third source that I wanted. Let's see where it is. I just got so many different tabs open. It can be a bit of a pain to. There we go. This is just another one, just so we repeat it, and now it's said to you the third time. NewWorldEncyclopedia.org. Cyrus, I'm not going to read the Persian stuff. Also known as Cyrus the Great and Cyrus II of Persia, was the founder of the Persian Empire under the Achaemenid dynasty. As the ruler of the Persian people in Anshan, he conquered the Medes and went on to conquer the Babylonian Empire, which we're going to talk about that more later on. He wrote the Cyrus Cylinder, considered to be the first declaration of human rights. And really, with the Babylonian Empire, he sent a Median to go do it, Darius the Mede, to go handle that for him. And that was just that. So let's just read it again. And Daniel to the 7 verse 5, behold, another beast, a second like to a bear, and raised itself up on one side, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it, and he said, thus unto it rise, devour much flesh. So it raised itself up on one side. We just proved that the Persians became stronger than the Medes. The Medes owned the Persians at one point. The Lord had it set up for Cyrus to revolt, and Cyrus became the ruling one. The Persians became the ruling nation over the Medes. And it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it, and it said, thus unto it rise, devour much flesh. And those 3 ribs are Babylon/Mesopotamia, which Mesopotamia means between the 2 rivers, like that entire region, Egypt and Lydia. And devour much flesh means the kingdom was vast. So let's get another source here, and then we may jump back and forth and touch on certain things. So this is the book of Daniel, chapter 8, verse 1. The third year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared unto me, even unto me Daniel, after that which appeared to me at the first. And I saw in a vision, it came to pass, when I was at Shushan, and the palace was in the province of Elam, and I saw in a vision, and I was by the river Ulai. So let's get a source here. This is DanielBibleProphecy.org. King Belshazzar only reigned for 3 years. If you remember back to chapter 5, it was during his rulership that the Babylonian Empire crumbled under the hands of the Medes and Persians. So we find this vision coming to Daniel in the final year of the reign of King Belshazzar in the Babylonian Empire. Also, this vision is 2 years after the one that appeared unto Daniel first in chapter 7. And a lot of the things here, Daniel's the 8th chapter, a lot of it's similar to Daniel the 7th chapter. A lot of similar points are going on with certain changes, which we'll get into at a later time when the need arises. Now, when you read Daniel the 8th chapter, it's talking about King Belshazzar, but as with many other scriptures, it's not what you would call in chronological order, because you can read Daniel the 5th chapter, and this is where you get let's see here, Daniel the 5th chapter, and you get the fall. Yeah, exactly. You get the fall of Belshazzar and the rise of the Persians taking over Babylon, the Medo-Persian Empire taking over Babylon at the end of Daniel the 5th chapter. So this is like jumping back in time. Okay, so it's not in chronological order. This is like a jumping back. All right, because in the 5th chapter, as I said already, the Medo-Persian already took over Babylon. As I said, read that in Daniel the 5th chapter at the end, and now that actually proves that it's one of the 3 ribs, which is Babylon. But we're gonna get back into. Let's finish reading up here, one thing at a time. Daniel was located in the palace at Shushan or Susa, which was the metropolis of the province of Elam, which in other maps I believe they say Susa is also in Persia, but once again they're the same people. Near the river Ulai, the king of Babylon had a palace situated there, which would not make it a strange occurrence for Daniel to be there. For with the position that Daniel held in the kingdom, it would easily indicate that he was there fulfilling the king's business. Now, it was really a vision, but that's I'm not even gonna bother, man. It was really just a vision. It was not like he was actually, there. It was just a vision, But once again, these are these different sites. You gotta pick the meat from the bones. Abrides was the prince of the province of Elam, which lies east of Babylon. He later revolted and sided with Cyrus the Persian. Thus Elam became a province of Persia, linked up with the Medes to conquer Babylon. Oh, whoops. But they're the same people anyway, so it's like I didn't go off for anything. They're literally the same exact people. So that's that. And I think that's the perfect time to go ahead and get this. As we said, we mentioned Daniel chapter 5. Now, this was on the night of the fall of Babylon. Daniel had been in Babylon 7 years. He was now a very old man. And this is Halley's Bible Handbook, page 344. Belshazzar, let's see here. There we go. Belshazzar until 1853. No mentions of Belshazzar was found in Babylonian records. And Nabonidus 555 to 538 BC was known to have been the last king of Babylon. To the critics, this was one of the evidences that the book of Daniel is not historical, which just goes to the atheists. The scriptures talk about atheists. There's a scripture on it. I'm not going to get it right now though. Actually, let's see if I can go get it. Fool says there is no God. I'll just read it real quick. This is the book of Psalm chapter 14 verse 1. The chief musician, the Psalm of David. The fool hath said in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt. They have done abominable works. There is none that doeth good. So once again, a fool is someone who says there is no God. And that's what these people do. They try to look in the scriptures and they try to disprove it and say that, oh, look, this guy, he never happened. Look, he's on the records. And once again, these kingdoms have been around for long periods of time. There's lots of different transfers of powers. Certain things are burnt up, certain things are destroyed by whatever nation conquers them. Things happen, and it's really the Lord's control anyway for certain things to be around and certain things not to be around. But the fact of the matter is that history will always show it. The Lord will show it. You look at the history, it will I guess you could say, like, the history backs up the scriptures, and that's all the Lord's doing. And even if something's not explicitly written in the scriptures, it all ties in. Just want to mention that. And there we go. But in 1853, an inscription was found in a cornerstone of a temple built by Nabonidus in to a god, which read, "May I, Nabonidus, king of Babylon, not sin against thee, and may reverence for thee dwell in the heart of Belshazzar, my firstborn favored son." Which, once again, as I brought out in Wisdom of Solomon 13:1, surely vain are all men by nature who are ignorant of the Most High. And that's what these people are. If they're not serving the Most High, they weren't made to. They're heathens. So once again, this was all vanity, all pride, and that's why the Lord did away with them, man. In these times that's coming in, we're looking for the Lord to rise us up, and we're gonna have those new bodies. We're not gonna go off no more. We're gonna be immortal and have an eternal rulership on the planet Earth. But once again, the Lord just had this nation. Babylonians used them for a time, had them rule, and then had them taken out of rulership. And that was already predicted by the prophets, which I already broke that down already. I think it was Ezekiel who did the 70-year prophecy. So, you know. Yeah. I made reverence for the dwell in the heart of Belshazzar, my firstborn favorite son. From other descriptions, it may have been learned that Nabonidus much of the time was in retirement outside of Babylon, and that Belshazzar was in control of the army and the government, co-regent with his father, and that it was he who surrendered to Cyrus. This explains how Daniel could be the third ruler in the kingdom. Exactly. So, as I said, I mentioned that a few times, Daniel, the 5th chapter. You know, and once again, this is what we just read. That's, it coming to pass. The 3 ribs. So the 3 ribs, Babylon being one of them that was taken down. And let's keep reading on. Handwriting on the wall, which you can read Daniel the 5th chapter for yourself. Inscriptions found in recent years state that the Persian army under Gobryas took Babylon without a battle, that he killed the son of the king, that Cyrus entered later. Darius, 31, who reigned in Babylon, I guess age 31, who reigned in Babylon until Cyrus took over, which that's written in Daniel 6 and 28 and Daniel 9 and 1, is not mentioned in the descriptions. He is thought to have been either Gobryas, who was named in the Babylonian tablets as conqueror of Babylon, or as Josephus says, Caesares, the Median father-in-law of Cyrus. To have a Babylonian name and native name is common, as Daniel and his 3 friends were given new names. And I'm pretty sure that same Caesares is the same one that was helping out the Medes, helping out Babylon, and with the fall of Nineveh, It's probably not the same guy. I'm not gonna really dig into it. This is just conjecture anyway. But whether Darius was father-in-law of Cyrus or one of his generals, he led the army that conquered Babylon while Cyrus was busy with his northern and western wars, and until the personal rival of Cyrus reigned as king of Babylon, probably for about 2 years, 538 to 536 BC. So that's that. So that's Babylon taken down for you. And Nabonidus was a priest. He was elsewhere, and he left Belshazzar, his son, to rule. And the Lord had set up for Darius the Mede to come down and take over Babylon without a fight, and later give it on to Cyrus. All right, so that was that, and that proves all of that. But let's continue reading on in Daniel, the 8th chapter, in the 3rd verse. Then I lifted up mine eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram, the river of Ulai. And there stood before the river a ram which had 2 horns. The 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. So let's go read about that. And here. So this is enduringword.com. A ram which had 2 horns. In the same chapter, Daniel 8 and 20, the ram was clearly identified as representing the Medo-Persian Empire, which succeeded the Babylonian Empire. It wasn't a stretch to use a ram to represent the Medo-Persian Empire. Ammianus Marcellus, a 4th century historian, states that the Persian ruler bore the head of a ram as he stood at the head of an army. The ram was a national symbol, national emblem of Persia, a ram being stamped on the Persian coins, as well as the headdress of Persian emperors. And that's about Strauss. And I'm not exactly sure who Strauss is, but a writer, I suppose. Let's see if we can go down to the bottom. And unfortunately, no sources, which a little disappointing. I would like to know who this Strauss person is, but not even a link to click it. But whatever, I'm not really gonna bother about it. But yeah, and there was another source I found that absolutely the ram was a emblem of the Persian Median Empire. Was it here? No, it wasn't here. It wasn't this website. There was a website. Let's just look up ram Persian Empire. There was this website here that said, here you go, that was that one. Yeah, well, we'll just use this one, but you can look at the images for yourself if you want. But this is gorbani.com. There are many Persian carpets with the ram's horn motif, and the symbolism behind it is fertility, power, and masculinity. The point of this symbol comes from a millennia ago, and then it goes off and starts talking about different astrological signs and whatever. The ram has always been a symbol of the Persian Empire, Achaemenid dynasty that started in the 6th century BC during the Age of Aries. Once again, I'm not even gonna worry about that. And the kings and armies often wore helmets with ram's horns on. It was not only the Persians who revered this symbolism, and I'm not gonna bother with the rest because it's just seems to be going on about mythology, and I don't have the fucking patience to read this shit right now, man. Because it's just a bunch of nonsense, and I don't want to read that shit. All right, but that's that. So let's go back. And I set up my eyes and lo, let's lock it. Then I lifted up my eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram which had 2 horns, and 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and higher came up last. So it had 2 horns. The 2 horns are the Medes and the Persians. Medes are Japhites, Persians are Elamites. And the 2 horns were high, but one was higher. The Medes were higher at first in the history, and then the Persians were the ones at the bottom, and the higher came up last. Okay, so meaning that the Persians became greater than the Medes, which is an exact mirror of what we just read in Daniel, the 7th chapter, in the 5th verse, how it raised itself up at one side, which represents how the Persians became stronger than the Medes. How the Persians become stronger than the Medes? Well, Cyrus led a revolt against the Median Empire. As we read here, Cyrus led him. Let's read it again. Duxus.com, Cyrus the Great. Around the age of 21, Cyrus took over the throne as king of Anshan. At this time, Anshan was still a vassal state to the Median Empire. Cyrus led a revolt against the Median Empire, and by 549, he had completely conquered Media. He now called himself the king of Persia. So that's that. And we proved that again. Verse 4, and I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beast might stand before him. Neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand, but he did according to his will. And became great. And as we went into, which I'm pretty sure I mentioned it already, but the three ribs are Babylon, Egypt, and Lydia. And East is not mentioned because the Medo-Persian Empire was situated in the east, and modern day Iran, which Iran changed its name to Iran. Originally it was called Persia. Neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand. The empire was too strong at that time. The west, right? Because it said westward, man pushing westward, was Babylon. The north was Lydia, and the south is Egypt. And Lydia is in Asia Minor, and Babylon is in Mesopotamia, and the south is Egypt, and you know where Egypt is. All right, and this is the same exact ones that you read about here with the 3 ribs. So let's go back to EnduringWord.com, Daniel 7. The bear represented the Medo-Persian Empire succeeding the Babylonian Empire. In this partnership between the Medes and the Persians dominated the relationship. Most think the 3 ribs represented their 3 great military conquests: Babylon, Egypt, and Lydia, which in process of time they actually acquired much more than just Babylon, Egypt, and Lydia, because you can go into the book of Esther and there's like 127 provinces that they had, so you can look at that for yourself. The slow crushing armies of the Medo-Persian Empire were well known. They simply overwhelmed their opponents with superior size and strength. The Medes and the Persians are compared to a bear on account of the cruelty and thirst for blood, a bear being a most voracious and cruel animal. So that's another way you can look at it. In the 7th chapter, they're a bear because they're cruel and they thirst after blood. That's why it says there, arise, devour much flesh. It means the kingdom was very vast. They had much strength. Let's see. We don't really need to go into the rest of this. That's pretty much it on that one. So we went to the Babylonians. That's Daniel, the 5th chapter. But we still have to go into Egypt and Lydia. So let's just do Lydia first real quick. So Lydia was a region of Western Asia Minor. This is worldhistory.org, by the way. Lydia was a region of Western Asia Minor, which prospered due to its natural resources and position on trading routes between the Mediterranean and Asia. The kingdom of Lydia flourished in the 7th and 6th centuries BCE and expanded to its greatest extent during the reign of Croesus, famed for its great wealth. Lydia then became a Persian satrapy, which is capital at Sardis. And then that's it. I'm going to leave it at the rest. It was later conquered by Alexander, but that's going to come in the next part. I'm not going to talk about that right now. I may or may not mention it in the next part. Let's see here. Lydia, geography and resources. Lydia, a name derived from its first king, Lytus, according to Herodotus, but also known as Maonia, occupied on the western region of Asia Minor, Anatolia, or modern-day Turkey, and Hermus and Caister valleys. Its neighbor were Caria, south, Phrygia, east, and Mysia, north. The cities located on the coast, such as Smyrna and Ephesus, which appear in the New Testament and the scriptures with Paul, etc., Ephesians, were intimately under the control of Lydia. As a meeting point between east and west, Lydia became an important trading area, which further enriched the kingdom already blessed with fertile land and natural resources, especially silver and gold from the Pactolus River. Lydia was also noted for its production of fine textiles and leather goods. So no wonder that the Persians wanted. Let's skip down a little bit. The Greeks told the legendary wealth of Croesus, which let's actually just read from the top. Of Croesus, Lydia thrived even more under the last Mermnad king, which is a dynasty of them, and he's a Japhite, who conquered the Greek cities on the coast and expanded the empire to control all the Anatolian plateau up to the river Halys, and thus border the Persian Empire. Croesus maintained friendly diplomatic relations with the Greeks, and he even gave financial aid to the rebuilding of the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus, and made dedications at Delphi, where he famously misinterpreted the oracle's proclamation that an empire would fall. Alas, it would be Lydia, and not, as Croesus thought, Persia. So, once again, the Lord had that set up. Damn oracles, man. They're really communicating with demons. But once again, demons are controlled by the Lord. The Greeks told the legendary wealth of Croesus, probably based on the fact that Lydia was one of the first states to mint coinage. Perhaps in the reign of Croesus' father Alyattes, they were the first nation to, one of the first states to mint coinage. And you have here Lydian gold stated, which you can look it up, one of the first states to go ahead and do that. Let's continue reading. These roughly made coins were small lumps of electrium, an alloy of gold and silver, or pure silver and gold, which were stamped with the design of a lion and an ox. Croesus' expansion of Lydia came to abrupt end when the Persian king Cyrus II defeated him in 546 BCE. The Persian king Cyrus II defeated him in 546 BCE in the battle at Halys. Croesus was thrown on a funeral pyre, with legend claiming the king was saved by Apollo. Bullshit, once again, vain. And taken to a mythical land of the Hyperboreans, while Sardis was taken, and Lydia became thereafter a Persian satrapy. Okay, and that's pretty much it for that one. So that's Lydia. We talked about Babylon. Now that's Lydia. Now just to get to Persia real quick, or Greece real quick, and it happened. Slakia. That happened. What am I talking about? This is BibleHub.com, Daniel 7, verse 5, Cambridge Bible for schools and colleges, and the 3 ribs. And it had 3 ribs. As a prey which it had seized, those who regard the bear symbolizing the Medo-Persian Empire generally suppose the 3 ribs to denote Lydia, Babylon, and Egypt, 3 prominent countries conquered, the first 2 by Cyrus and the third by Cambyses. But it is quite possible that the ribs in the creature's mouth are meant simply as an indication of his veracity. No, it's not. It represents the countries absorbed. Once again, it's a damn devil, and he always want to switch things up, and they don't got the spirit. They don't got the spirit, man. it's just evident. These Bible scholars are able to see these things, that they're evident, and that this has to be, what it is, but they don't have the Spirit. But let's go ahead and check it out, and it will close off. So this is Halley's Bible Handbook, page 230. As the policy of Assyrian and Babylonian kings had been to deport conquered peoples, that is, take them away out of their own lands and scatter them in other lands. So the policy of Persian kings exactly the opposite, was to repatriate those people, that is, to send them back to their own lands. Persian kings are more humane than Assyrian and Babylonian kings. One of the first acts of the first Persian king, Cyrus, who was a singularly noble and just monarch, which that's what he says, in his first year was to authorize the return of the Jews to their own land. Which, yeah, you could say he was noble and just because he did that for us. He had our people go back to our own land. They say Jews because Judah, southern kingdom, the northern kingdom was already dragged out, even though he did have some northern kingdom still there, in the land, certain sprinklings that was still in Israel, but the northern kingdom came over to America, and they spread across Canada, across North America and South America, Caribbean, etc., etc. And see here, we don't really gotta read the rest one. As the world empire lasted 200 years, its kings were Cyrus, 538 to 529 BC, conquered Babylon, made Persia a world empire, permitted the Jews to return to their homeland, the southern kingdom. And for the fulfillment of Isaiah's prophecy, which we know about, let's just go ahead and check it out. And we'll get ready to close out because I'm pretty sure I brought out a lot of info. Yep, there we go. Isaiah 45. We know about that one. Also 44. I had no idea that also Isaiah 44 is talking about that. Yeah, I gotta get more into these prophetic scriptures. More into these Isaiahs and things like that. But once again, everything will come in its own time. Cambyses, 529 to 522 BC, which is the one that conquered Egypt. He is thought to have been Artaxerxes, mentioned in Ezra chapter 4 verse 7, 11, and 23, who stopped work on the temple. Darius the first Hyastopes authorized completion of the temple. It's talking about the second temple. Ezra the 6th chapter. I'm not going to read the rest. Xerxes, Ahasuerus, famous for wars with Greece. Esther was his wife. As we get the book Esther from. Artaxerxes Longimanus, very favorable to the Jews, authorized Nehemiah, his cupbearer, to rebuild Jerusalem. Xerxes II, Darius II, Artaxerxes II, Artaxerxes III, Arces, Darius III, Cotamanus. He was defeated by Alexander the Great at the famous Battle of Arbela near the site of Nineveh. This was the fall of Persia and the rise of Greece. The empire passed from Asia to Europe. So that's a little bit of a spoiler and a cliffhanger for Darius III, and that's going to lead to the fall of Persia. But as we're reading right now, this is Persia's rulership, up into their own fall. And once again, as the scriptures say, let's see here. This is the book of let me see here. Let's see. Whithersoever. Let's see if I can find it this way. This is the book of Proverbs, chapter 21, verse 1. The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. As the rivers of water, he turneth it whithersoever he will. And this is another scripture proving that free will is an illusion. And the king's heart or his lob or his mind is in the hand of the Lord. The Lord controls the mind of these kings. And the Lord has it set up for these rulerships to come up and these rulerships to come down. And it's the same way he has it here in America. America's going to rule. It's been ruling. And now we're moving to the time where America's going to go down. And Yahushua's rulership is going to come upon the planet Earth. Because that's prophecy. And we know that the Lord's word doesn't come back to him void. It's going to happen. Like when you're in a mountain. And I got this example or this analogy from the brother out there in Holland, the elder brother. I think his name is Quadazop, but he made a very good analogy. He said, like when you're in the mountains and you scream in the mountains, it's like oh, like you have the echo and then the volume gradually goes down. But when the Lord's voice goes out, it basically stays meaning it doesn't echo, it doesn't go down or disappear. It just goes down and stays active because it happens, man. And that's just another way you can think about it. Once again, the Lord sets his kingdom up as the Persians rule for a time. In the next part, we're going to get more into that. At the end of the Medo-Persian rulership, with Darius III losing the battle of Gaugamela, we'll talk about Alexander the Freak, and that'll be the next part. But Lord willing, you were edified. We went over a lot of information. Just as a quick recap, and then I'll close out. So the bears, the Medo-Persian Empire, it raised itself up on one side, represents the Persians becoming stronger than the Medes. The three ribs are Babylon, Mesopotamia, Egypt, and Lydia. Then it says, arise and devour much flesh, which means the kingdom was vast. In the 8th chapter, which you read, it says a ram which had two horns. Ram was actually emblem for the Persian Empire, and which you explained that already. And then the two horns represent the Medo-Persian Empire. The ram represents the Medo-Persian Empire. One was higher than the other, and the higher came up last, which means that the Medes were the ones that were at the bottom, and the Persians rose up. Remember, Cyrus revolted against the Medes. The ram pushing westward, northward, and southward, which the west represents Babylon, which you read about in Daniel the 5th chapter. The north was Lydia, which remember Cyrus took that from Croesus, and I think that was whatever battle that was. We already talked about it. I think it was the battle of I think I must have closed it already. Damn it. Oh no, I didn't. There we go. The battle of Halies. I thought it was something like that. Halias or Halies. I don't know how to say it. And itself was Egypt, which that wasn't actually taken by Cyrus. That was taken by his son, Cambyses, and I'm pretty sure it's Cambyses the second. Here we go. Cambyses the second, who took Egypt. He conquered Cambyses II, Flora, 6th century BCE. Achaemenid, king of Persia, reigned 529 to 522 BCE, who conquered Egypt in 525 BCE. He was the eldest son of King Cyrus II the Great by Cassadani, daughter of Achaemenid. During his father's lifetime, Cambyses was in charge of Babylonian affairs, and that was Britannica.com. So that's pretty much everything I could really touch on. As I said, this was just like deeper stuff, like lots of history. I want to get in on it, things that I haven't heard before, and touch on these things. Lord willing, I'll add it to my King James. But I'm gonna go close out, and shalom.